Welcome to the Music is Medicine podcast. I'm Matt Creedon. A place where we explore music not simply as something we perform, but as something that can teach us, heal us, and bring us home to ourselves. Today's episode is about a confident little boy who stood in front of his class to perform and suddenly discovered that he could no longer control his hands. Nobody laughed, nobody seemed to notice anything unusual, but inside his body the experience was terrifying. What began as a simple moment of uncontrollable shaking gradually became a fear that followed him into adulthood. This is a story about performance anxiety, judgment, and the courage to stop fighting our own bodies. Most importantly, it is a story about forgiveness and learning that our trembling hands may not need to be conquered, they may simply need to feel safe. This is the day his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd always been a confident boy. He was the sort of child who believed that he could do almost anything if he tried hard enough. He spoke easily in front of the class, made friends quickly, and rarely worried about what other people thought of him. So when his teacher asked him to play his instrument in front of the class, he was nervous, but he was also excited. He had practiced the piece, he knew the notes, knew where his fingers needed to go. He stood at the front of the room, adjusted the instrument, prepared to begin. Then something happened that he had never experienced before. His hands began to shake. At first, he thought he could ignore it. He took a breath and tried to play the opening notes, but the shaking became stronger. His fingers would not do what he was asking them to do. The more he tried to control them, the more violently they trembled. He looked around the classroom. Nobody was laughing. Nobody seemed particularly concerned. Most of the children were simply waiting for him to continue. His teacher may not have even noticed what was happening, but he noticed. Inside his body, the experience was terrifying. He felt as though he had lost possession of his own hands. Until that moment, he had believed that if he knew what to do, his body would simply do it. But now his mind was giving clear instructions, and his hands were refusing to obey. Somehow, he made it through the performance. The class moved on. To everyone else, it was probably an unremarkable moment in an ordinary school day. For the boy, it was something entirely different. The boy went home thinking about his hands. Why had they shaken like that? What if it happens again? What if next time the shaking becomes even worse? He tried to reassure himself that it was only a strange one-off experience, but the next time someone mentioned performing, his stomach tightened. Before he had even agreed to play, his mind was already searching for an escape. What can I do to get out of this? He wanted to perform. That was what made the fear so confusing. Part of him imagined how wonderful it would feel to stand in front of people and share his music. Another part remembered the terrifying sensation of losing control of his body. He was not simply afraid of making mistakes. He was afraid of the shaking. He was afraid that his hands might stop belonging to him again. Whenever another opportunity to perform appeared, the same pattern began. Days beforehand, he would start thinking about it. His heart would race, his hands would feel strange. He would imagine standing in front of everyone, unable to play. He would picture people watching him and wondering what was wrong. Sometimes he found an excuse. He felt sick. He had not practiced enough. The instrument was not working properly. The piece was not ready. Each escape brought immediate relief, but beneath that relief was disappointment. He knew that he wanted to play. He also knew that he was becoming frightened of something he had once believed he could do. The confident boy was still there, but now he had discovered something confidence alone could not control. As he grew older, the boy began to understand another part of his fear. Like many children, he had sometimes poked fun at other people. He had laughed when someone said the wrong thing, stumbled over an answer, or looked uncomfortable in front of the class. He had not thought much about it at the time. Then the shoe was on the other foot. Now he knew what it felt like to stand in front of people and wonder whether they were judging every movement. He began to fear that others might treat him exactly as he had sometimes treated them. Every laugh in the room sounded as though it might be about him. Every whispered conversation felt suspicious. Every mistake seemed like an opportunity for someone to expose him. He felt terrible about the times he had laughed at others. Perhaps, he thought, this fear was what he deserved. So he judged himself. He replayed old memories and called himself cruel. He believed that if he felt guilty enough, he might somehow repay the people he had hurt. But no matter how severely he punished himself, the fear of performing remained. Beating himself up did not steady his hands. Guilt did not make him feel safer. It only added another voice to the audience inside his mind. The years passed, and the fear came with him. The boy became an adult who still loved music. He could play comfortably when he was alone. At home, his hands knew exactly what to do. But the moment someone began watching, his attention shifted away from the music. He looked at his fingers. Are they starting to shake? He checked his breathing. Can they see how nervous I am? He listened for every small imperfection. Was that a mistake? Did they notice? The more closely he watched his body, the less freely his body could move. He was no longer playing the music. He was trying to prevent something frightening from happening. Some performances went well, others were difficult, but even successful performances did not completely assure him. He would think, I got away with it this time, but what about the next one? That little boy was still standing at the front of the classroom, trying desperately to regain control of his hands. For years, the man treated the shaking as an enemy. He tried to force it away. He told himself to calm down. He became angry with his body when it would not obey. He believed that a confident person should be able to control such things. But the harder he fought the shaking, the more threatening it became. Eventually, he began to understand that his body was not trying to betray him. It was trying to protect him. His nervous system had remembered the original performance as a moment of danger. Every new opportunity to perform activated the same alarm. The shaking was not evidence that he was weak, incapable, or unprepared. It was his body releasing an enormous surge of energy because it believed he needed to survive. His hands had never abandoned him. They had become frightened. That changed the question. Instead of asking, how do I stop my hands from shaking? He began asking, how can I help my body to feel safe while I play? He began to recognize how much judgment he carried. He had judged other people. He had imagined other people judging him. Then he had judged himself for being afraid of their judgment. It had become a circle with no obvious way out. He could not return to a childhood and take back every unkind laugh. But he could acknowledge what he had done and choose to become kinder now. He could remember that he had been a child who did not yet understand how deeply embarrassment could hurt. He could forgive the people he had mocked. He could forgive himself for joining in. He could forgive the imaginary audience he had carried inside his mind for so many years. There is only one person in the universe who can continue hurting you with an old experience. Every child knows the answer. They may not always behave as though they remember it, but when pressed, They usually say, "Ah, yep, that would be me." This does not mean that other people cannot hurt us. Their actions can cause real pain. It means that long after the moment has passed, we can continue repeating it within ourselves. The man had spent years imagining laughter that had never actually occurred during the first performance. Nobody in the classroom seemed to have noticed his shaking. Yet he had carried an audience in his own mind and allowed it to watch him every time he played. Forgiveness offered him a way to leave that classroom. He did not overcome his fear through one dramatic performance. He began quietly. Firstly, he played while one trusted person sat in the room. His hands shook a little. Instead of fighting them, he placed his feet firmly on the floor and took 3 slow breaths. He softened his shoulders. He loosened his grip. Then he reminded himself, "My body is allowed to feel nervous. I do not have to make the feeling disappear before I begin." He played a few notes. They were not perfect, but nothing terrible happened. Later, he recorded himself playing, then he shared the recording with someone he trusted. Eventually, he played for 2 people, then a small group. Sometimes his hands still shook, but he stopped treating the shaking as a catastrophe. When it happened, he slowed down. He breathed. He felt the ground beneath his feet. He listened to the sound instead of watching his fingers. Most importantly, he continued playing. Each time he remained with the music, his body learned something new. We can be nervous and still be safe. Our hands can shake and still make music. We do not have to escape. The man had once believed that peace meant complete control over his body. Now he understood that peace was something gentler. Peace was allowing his hands to shake without hating them. Peace was making a mistake without imagining that everyone had turned against him. Peace was remembering the people he had once laughed at and allowing that memory to make him more compassionate rather than more ashamed. Peace was standing beside the frightened child within him and saying, "You do not have to do this perfectly. I will not abandon you because you are afraid." The fear did not vanish all at once, but it no longer made every decision. One evening, the man was invited to play for a small group of people. As he prepared to begin, he felt the familiar surge of energy. His heart beat faster. His hands trembled. For a moment, the old thought returned, "What can I do to get out of this?" Then he looked at his hands, and he did not order them to stop shaking. He did not apologize for them. He simply breathed and silently said, "I know you are frightened. We are going to play anyway." He began with one note, then another. Gradually, his attention moved away from the shaking and into the sound. He stopped watching himself from the imagined audience and returned to the music. His hands had not needed to be conquered. They had needed to be forgiven. When the final note faded, he realized that forgiveness had not only released the people he once judged, it had released him from the expectation that the world would judge him in return. He no longer needed guilt to prove that he had changed. He could demonstrate that change through kindness to other musicians, to frightened children, and to the trembling hands that had carried his music all along. The past had played its note. He did not have to keep repeating it. Perhaps there is still a frightened child within you who remembers the first time music stopped feeling safe. Maybe somebody laughed, maybe you were criticized, or perhaps, like the boy in today's story, nobody seemed to notice, but something happened inside your body that you never wanted to experience again. Please remember, fear does not mean you are not a musician. Shaking does not mean your body has betrayed you. Your nervous system may simply be trying to protect you from an experience it still remembers as dangerous. You do not have to punish yourself into becoming confident. Begin gently, breathe, feel your feet upon the ground, play one note for someone you trust, and allow your body to discover that it can feel nervous and still be safe. Your hands do not need to be perfect before they are allowed to make music. They may tremble, let them tremble, and play anyway. Thank you for listening to the Music is Medicine podcast with me, Matt Creedon. If you'd like to continue exploring music in a supportive community, you are warmly invited to join the Matt Creedon School of Music. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, listen deeply, and remember, when I release judgment, peace can play through me.